Anthony sits in the dim glow of his office when a notification on his wife's iPad shatters the illusion of their perfect life. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that red dress I love," the message reads, and with it, the weight of betrayal crashes down. But this isn't a tale of quiet heartbreak. This is the spark that ignites a storm. With every calculated lie and hidden rendezvous uncovered, Anthony is no longer the man who turns a blind eye. In a world of wealth, power, and deception, who will come out unscathed? Dive into this gripping story of revenge, redemption, and the ultimate reckoning. My dear friend, be sure to subscribe to my channel if this is your first time here, and give your royal like to this video. Anthony sat quietly in the soft glow of his home office, staring at the alert that had just appeared on his wife's iPad. The device rested innocuously on his desk, connected to her iPhone through their shared Apple ID, a link Merlin had evidently underestimated. The message preview cut through the stillness. "Can't wait to see you tonight at Stevens. Wear that red dress I love." His hand shook as he reached for the iPad, the words burning into his consciousness. From down the hall, the sound of running water reached him, a reminder that she was in their master bathroom. Merlin's cheerful humming drifted through the house as she prepared for what she had described as a girls' night out. The tune felt like acid on his nerves. Before Anthony could fully absorb what he'd seen, the message disappeared, erased remotely from her phone. But the damage was already done, the betrayal etched into his memory. Anthony's thoughts churned as he sifted through the past 6 months, replaying moments he had ignored or excused. The late-night work meetings, the cryptic messages, the way she flipped her phone screen down whenever he entered the room. He pulled up their shared calendar with mechanical detachment. Tonight was marked as dinner with Sophia and Madison. Another lie. Opening her location history, he saw a recent search for Stephen's address, which only solidified his growing suspicion. The water shut off suddenly, jolting Anthony back to the present. He quickly returned the iPad to its original spot and sat at his desk, feigning calm. His reflection in the darkened monitor betrayed him, his eyes hollow, his jaw tense, his face lined with the weight of discovery. "Honey," Merlin called from the bedroom, "have you seen my red Louboutins?" A knot formed in his stomach, the red dress, the red shoes, all for another man. "Behind your winter boots," he replied, surprised at the steadiness in his voice. "Found them," she shouted back. "You're the best." Her light-hearted tone felt like a knife twisting in his chest. How many times had he unknowingly assisted her in getting ready for these girls' nights that were nothing more than covert rendezvous? Once the hum of the hairdryer filled the air, Anthony checked Stephen's address on his phone. The location, a sprawling estate in the exclusive North Shore area, was surrounded by mansions worth millions. Stephen Sullivan, a hedge fund magnate notorious for his extravagant parties and scandalous affairs, had ensnared Merlin. The thought left Anthony hollow. When Merlin appeared in the doorway of his office, Anthony's breath caught. She was stunning in the red dress, exuding confidence and allure. Her dark hair framed her face perfectly, and her makeup accentuated every feature. All of it, he realized, for another man. "What do you think?" she asked, twirling with a practiced charm. "You look amazing," he said, each word laced with bitterness he struggled to hide. "What time should I expect you home?" he asked casually. Adjusting her diamond earrings, a gift from him on their last anniversary, she chuckled. "Don't wait up. Sophia always insists on one more drink." With that, she grabbed her clutch, the sparkle of her wedding ring mocking him as she turned to leave. Did she remove it when she got to Stevens? Did the other guests know she was married, or did they look the other way? "Have fun," he said, his voice flat. "Be careful." Merlin blew him a kiss and vanished down the hall. The front door opened and closed, and moments later her car engine purred to life. Anthony stayed motionless until the sound of her Mercedes faded into the distance. Then, with a deliberate calm, he entered Stephen's address into his GPS. The drive would take 30 minutes, enough time for her to settle in before he arrived. Changing into dark jeans and a charcoal shirt, Anthony's mind raced with memories of their early days together. The glow in her eyes when he proposed, their wedding, building their home. Had any of it been real? Or had she always seen him as a stepping stone? The framed wedding photo in the hallway taunted him as he passed, her smile seeming almost cruel in hindsight. The garage door rumbled open, and Anthony backed his car into the cool autumn evening. Nights like this were once spent together, sharing wine and laughter. Tonight, he drove toward the wreckage of their marriage. The GPS guided him through increasingly lavish neighborhoods, the houses growing more ostentatious with each turn. Security cameras blinked from their perches, silent witnesses to the lives of the wealthy. Finally, he reached a private drive where faint music and laughter spilled into the night. Stephen's estate loomed ahead, its grandeur designed to impress and intimidate. Luxury cars lined the driveway, their gleaming exteriors reflecting the opulent lights. Merlin's silver Mercedes was parked near the entrance, its custom license plates a stark reminder of his generosity. Beside it sat a sleek red Ferrari, Stephen's no doubt. Anthony parked and gripped the steering wheel, taking a deep breath to steady himself. Through the massive windows, silhouettes of partygoers swayed to the beat of the music. The sounds of revelry contrasted sharply with the storm brewing inside him. As he approached the entrance, a tipsy couple stumbled past him. The woman's laughter rang out as the man's hand roamed freely over her expensive dress. The sight reminded Anthony of Merlin at their last gala, returning from networking with flushed cheeks and smudged lipstick. Networking, a word that now carried a new, bitter meaning. Steeling himself, Anthony strode into the house with practiced confidence. The security guards barely acknowledged him as he passed. Inside, the decor was a jarring mix of excessive wealth and questionable taste. Crystal chandeliers, gold accents, and clashing modern art. The sheer extravagance left an unsettling impression. A woman in a daring gown approached him with a flirtatious smile, offering a glass of champagne. "First time at one of Stephen's parties?" she asked, her tone sultry. "Something like that," Anthony replied, taking the glass but leaving it untouched. "I'm Samantha," she said, stepping closer. "Want a tour? Stephen's parties are unforgettable." Anthony's expression hardened as he took a step back. "I'm here to find someone," he said firmly. Anthony's jaw clenched involuntarily at the mention of the name, Merlin Henderson. Opposite him, Samantha's perfectly sculpted brows lifted in surprise. "Oh, you're familiar with Merlin?" she asked, her voice taking on a tone laced with subtle wariness. "She's probably in the main ballroom with Stephen. They're practically inseparable at events like these." The deliberate weight she placed on the word inseparable sent a jolt of anger through Anthony, heating his blood. How many people at this gathering knew about his wife's betrayal? How many of them had whispered and laughed behind their glasses of champagne, finding amusement in his humiliation? Samantha gestured casually toward the double doors where the music pulsed the loudest. "Through there," she directed. "Beyond the living room. You can't miss it." Making his way through the throng of guests, Anthony noticed the atmosphere becoming more decadent with each room he entered. The living room was a den of indulgence, guests draped over expensive leather sofas, some in intimate embraces, others openly using substances with little discretion. In the kitchen, a makeshift bar gleamed with bottles that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, treated with the same regard as tap water. Finally, Anthony reached the ballroom and stopped cold. There she was. Merlin's scarlet dress blazed against the pristine marble, a vivid and deliberate contrast. She moved with slow, practiced sensuality, her body entwined with Stephen Sullivan's. Anthony recognized him immediately, a towering figure with the polished confidence of obscene wealth. Stephen's hands gripped Merlin's waist with a possessiveness that was impossible to ignore. As the music pounded, Anthony's stomach churned, watching her fingers glide up Stephen's chest before locking around his neck, an intimacy she had long denied her husband. Stephen leaned in, whispering something in Merlin's ear. Her laughter rang out, sharp and carefree, as her hand trailed provocatively under the hem of her dress. Her smile was wicked, her eyes sparkling with a dangerous blend of mischief and defiance. Anthony's grip on his champagne flute tightened until it gave way, shattering in his hand. Blood dripped from his fingers, but the pain barely registered. Oblivious to the murmurs and sidelong glances around him, Anthony pushed through the crowd, his focus locked on the pair. A guest cursed loudly as he spilled their drink, but the sound was muffled against the deafening roar in his ears. As he reached them, his voice sliced through the music, sharp and unyielding. "Having fun, are we?" Merlin's head snapped toward him, her expression cycling rapidly from surprise to recognition and finally settling on defiance. She made no move to separate from Stephen. Instead, she leaned into him, her stance provocative. "Anthony," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "what are you doing here? This is a private party." Stephen's hand remained planted on her thigh, his smirk maddeningly composed. He looked younger than Anthony had anticipated, his confidence more a product of wealth than substance. "So, you're the husband," Stephen said, his tone light and mocking. "Merlin's mentioned you. Late nights at the office, forgotten anniversaries, milestones missed. Someone had to keep her entertained." His smile held no warmth, only cruelty. A primal fury erupted within Anthony, and before he fully realized what was happening, his fist collided with Stephen's face. The crunch of cartilage breaking was satisfyingly visceral, and Stephen stumbled back, blood streaming from his nose. Merlin shrieked, though her reaction was fueled more by anger than concern. "You bastard!" she screamed, lunging at Anthony with her nails poised to strike. He caught her wrist mid-swing, his grip firm and unwavering. "Let go of me!" she spat venomously. "You have 24 hours, Anthony said, his voice unnervingly calm. "Pack your things and leave my house." Merlin laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Your house," she sneered. "I'll take everything, you hear me? Stephen and I will sue you for everything you've got. Right, Stephen?" Still clutching his nose, Stephen glared but kept his distance, unwilling to risk another blow. "We'll see you in court," he muttered, his voice muffled by pain. Anthony released Merlin's wrist with a forceful shove, making her stumble. 24 hours, he repeated, ice lacing his words. "After that, I'm changing the locks, and anything left behind goes in the trash." Merlin's shrieks escalated into a tirade. "You can't do this! I made you! You'd be nothing without me! Just another pathetic middle-class nobody!" The crowd, drawn by the unfolding drama, closed in with phones raised, capturing every moment. The music had ceased, leaving Merlin's venomous words to echo unchallenged. Faces reflected a mixture of shock, disgust, and voyeuristic intrigue. Anthony's tone remained unflinching. "Is that what you tell yourself?" he said coldly. "Let's talk about who really needed who. Your maxed-out credit cards, the loans from exes, the jobs you couldn't keep because playing Queen Bee was more important than working." Merlin's complexion turned ghostly pale. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have," Anthony countered. "Half of our assets are secured, and every penny I earned before you is meticulously documented. Explain to your lawyer how you contributed while burning through 60 grand a month on shopping and spa days." Stephen stepped forward, his once crisp shirt smeared with blood. "That's enough," he said weakly. "Security can handle this." Anthony turned to the crowd. "Show's over," he announced. "Enjoy the rest of the party. I'm sure the videos will make excellent morning entertainment." Locking eyes with Merlin one last time, he added, 24 hours, not a second more." He walked out without glancing back, deaf to her shrieks and Stephen's muttered threats. The onlookers parted for him, some avoiding his gaze, others offering subtle nods of approval. Near the exit, Samantha caught his eye. Her expression carried a flicker of what could only be described as respect. The drive home felt surreal. The ache in his knuckles was distant, overpowered by the storm of thoughts racing through his mind. Streetlights blurred into streaks as he replayed the night's events. When he reached his driveway now, he sat in the car for a moment, letting the silence settle. The house loomed before him, its grandeur masking the deceit it had harbored. Inside, every room felt colder, heavy with memories now poisoned by betrayal. How many times had she brought her lovers here? How many lies had she told beneath this roof? Anthony moved deliberately, uncovering proof of her treachery, credit card bills, suggestive emails, incriminating photos, and finally, a burner phone hidden among designer shoes. She hadn't even bothered to hide her tracks. Pouring himself a drink, Anthony settled in his office. Social media was already alight with videos of the confrontation, Merlin's polished image unraveling for all to see. Messages poured in, sympathy, shock, and quiet congratulations from those who had suspected her duplicity. For the first time in years, Anthony felt a sense of clarity. The facade had crumbled, and with it, the woman who had perpetuated it. Tomorrow, he would begin again, free from the lies, free to reclaim himself. A few people admitted they had thought about warning Anthony, but Merlin's notorious wrath and penchant for nighttime vengeance made them think twice. Just as the clock struck midnight, Anthony's phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. "You'll regret this, Anthony. I've always been the stronger one in this marriage, and now I'll prove it. Get ready for battle." Anthony didn't dignify Merlin's text with a response. He deleted it without hesitation. Let her stew. Let her strategize. He already held all the cards, damning evidence of her betrayals, financial manipulations, and cold-hearted schemes. She had toyed with him for too long, but her reign of deceit was coming to an end as the night wore on. With an unyielding resolve, Anthony set about purging Merlin's presence from the house. He stuffed her high-end designer clothes, some still with the tags attached, into bags and sealed them shut. He carefully cataloged her opulent jewelry with photos, storing it away as proof of her extravagance. One by one, he removed framed pictures from the walls, each snapshot a painful reminder of a past now irreparably broken. Fueled by a steely anger, he worked tirelessly through the night, his resolve hardening with every passing hour. Merlin had spent years crafting her intricate web of lies, mistaking Anthony's patience for weakness. Surrounded by sycophants, she reveled in her self-made illusions of control. But now the tide had turned, and she would learn the cost of underestimating him. As dawn broke, Anthony allowed himself a brief pause, gazing out from his office at the pristine lawns of their elite neighborhood. Outside, joggers waved to passing dog walkers, and sprinklers cast rainbows over immaculate gardens. The scene seemed idyllic, deceptively peaceful, but Anthony knew better than most that appearances could be deceiving. His phone vibrated again, displaying another message from Merlin. "I've spoken to my lawyer. She says your actions last night were assault. Stephen's filing charges. Prepare to lose everything." Anthony's lips curled into a faint, sardonic smile as he opened his laptop. It was time to forward his meticulously gathered evidence to his own lawyer. If Merlin wanted a fight, she would get one. But it wouldn't be the kind she was anticipating. The rules of the game had shifted, and Anthony had no intention of playing by her terms anymore. By the next morning, Anthony was back in his home office, sifting through the trove of incriminating evidence he'd amassed overnight. His computer screen displayed a series of damning photos from Merlin's hidden accounts, each image another nail in the coffin of their marriage. A loud knock on the front door interrupted his concentration. "Anthony Henderson!" Merlin's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Open this door right now!" Anthony glanced at the security feed on his phone. There she was, standing on the porch in oversized designer sunglasses, likely concealing red, tear-streaked eyes. Beside her stood Sandra Harrison, a divorce lawyer with a reputation for her cutthroat methods. He pressed the intercom button. "The locks haven't been changed yet, Merlin. Your key still works." Seconds later, the door swung open, and Merlin stormed in, her high heels echoing sharply against the hardwood floors. She had swapped the red dress she wore at the party for an expensive black pantsuit, no doubt chosen to project an air of authority. "You changed the security code," she barked as she entered his office. Anthony remained composed. "Just like you changed your phone password last month. Trust is funny, isn't it?" Sandra Harrison stepped forward, handing Anthony her business card. "Mr. Henderson, I represent your wife. Regarding the incident last night." "You mean when I exposed my wife's cheating at the party?" Anthony interrupted, ignoring the card. "How many videos of that have you watched this morning, Miss Harrison?" Merlin slammed her hands on his desk, her eyes blazing with fury. "You humiliated me! Do you have any idea what people are saying?" Anthony met her glare without flinching. "For once, they're speaking the truth. Those videos show who you really are, Merlin. No more pretense, no more lies, just you, threatening me while your lover lay bleeding. Sandra cleared her throat. Mr. Henderson, we intend to file for divorce on the grounds of cruel and inhuman treatment. The assault on Mr. Sullivan. Before you continue, Anthony cut her off, opening a folder on his laptop. You'll want to see this. He turned the screen toward them, revealing an array of texts, hotel bookings, and financial records. Each document painted a devastating picture. Merlin's so-called charity events had been cover stories for private rendezvous at Stephen's estate. Merlin's face turned pale. You hacked my accounts! Anthony chuckled dryly. Shared accounts, actually. Your iPad syncs with your phone. You've never been good with technology. He clicked through the files. Here you are with Stephen at the Valentine's Gala while I was in London on a business trip you insisted I couldn't postpone. And here's the hotel receipt from that same night. Sandra's composed facade faltered. Merlin, is there something you neglected to mention? He's lying! Merlin shouted, her voice rising in desperation. This is all fake! He's framing me! Anthony remained unshaken. The bank statements begged to differ. The money you claimed was for your sister's medical bills? It paid for her Bali vacation during her supposed surgery. When Merlin lunged for the laptop, Anthony smoothly moved it out of her reach. Everything is backed up in multiple places, he said coldly, including the $100,000 you transferred to Stephen's investment project from our joint account. Sandra set her briefcase down. Merlin, we need to speak privately. No! Merlin's meticulously applied makeup began to streak as she shouted. He has nothing! It's all lies! Anthony stood, his towering frame commanding the room. You might also want to know about the SEC's ongoing investigation into Stephen's hedge fund. Insider trading, money laundering, the kind of charges that make accomplices turn on each other in a heartbeat. The statement hit its mark. Merlin collapsed into a chair, her bravado shattered. Sandra's tone softened as she addressed Anthony. Perhaps we should discuss settlement terms. Anthony's response was firm. No settlements, no compromises. Merlin wanted a war, she's got one. After they left, Anthony's phone rang. The caller ID showed Andrew Parker, an old friend and a top divorce attorney in Chicago. Merlin's schemes had driven a wedge between them years ago. Quite the drama last night, Andrew said when Anthony answered. Those videos are everywhere. Still the best at divorce cases? Anthony asked, cutting straight to the point. For someone who vanished from my life? Andrew quipped. Merlin told me you hit on her at that Christmas party. Said you were sabotaging your own marriage. I should have known better. She cornered me after and threatened to ruin my marriage if I spoke up about Stephen Sullivan. I tried to warn you. I need your help, Andy, Anthony said. Not just as a lawyer. Already on it, Andrew replied. Check your email. I'm sending over everything we have on Stephen. The SEC investigation isn't public yet, but my clients have been talkative. Anthony opened his laptop. What's your retainer? For the chance to take Merlin down? Pro bono, Andrew said with a laugh. Consider it payback for her threats. But be ready, Anthony. She's going to fight dirty. Harrison was infamous for dismantling his adversaries' reputations on the stand. Let him try, Anthony thought grimly. He had nothing to conceal. Fortunately, that was true, especially now that rumors, courtesy of Merlin, were already spreading. She had accused him of abuse and manipulation, even alleging he invaded her privacy by monitoring her phone and keeping her isolated from her friends. Textbook projection, Anthony muttered with a sardonic chuckle, so typical of Merlin. Andrew had set up a lunch meeting to strategize. Morton's at 1, the message read. We need to go over everything. At the upscale steakhouse, Anthony found Andrew waiting in a secluded booth. Despite the years, Andrew's sharp demeanor and athletic build, a vestige of their rugby days, hadn't faded. On the table, 2 thick folders lay beside his plate. You look awful, Andrew greeted him bluntly. Imagine discovering your wife has been running a high-end escort operation from your own home, Anthony shot back. Andrew's eyebrows shot up. It's that bad? Anthony gave a grim nod. I found messages on her burner phone. She wasn't just cheating with Stephen. She was coordinating women for his parties and skimming a cut of their earnings. Unreal. Andrew opened one of the folders. This complicates the SEC's investigation. They've been tracking suspicious transactions tied to Stephen's investment fund. Anthony took a sip of water. Merlin knows something. You should have seen her expression when I brought it up. We can use that, Andrew said, pulling out a stack of papers. Stephen's fund is hemorrhaging millions, yet he's still throwing extravagant parties. The money's coming from somewhere. Turns out Merlin has been funneling funds to him, labeling them as investment opportunities. How much? Anthony asked. Over $100 grand from your joint account, and that's not counting what she's pulled from her private accounts, money earned through her side business. Andrew shook his head. The IRS would love this. Their meals arrived, but neither touched their steaks. Over the next hour, Andrew detailed possible defenses while Anthony rebutted every potential claim Merlin might use. She'll argue you condoned her activities, Andrew warned, claiming it was part of her networking to boost your career. I've got emails disproving that, Anthony countered. Texts exposing her lies and bank records showing the hidden transfers to Stephen. What about witnesses? Andrew asked. Plenty. Former friends of hers have reached out, eager to testify about her behavior. She's alienated too many people. Andrew's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. She just filed for an emergency restraining order, claiming she fears you after some incident at a party. Anthony's grip on his glass tightened. She's the one who stormed into my house this morning making threats. Security cameras catch that? Andrew asked. Every bit, including her trying to break into my office. Andrew smirked. Perfect. Judge Thompson is handling her filing. He's notorious for hating fabricated claims. Anthony's phone buzzed again. It was a text from Merlin. Last chance. Give me the house and half your savings, and I'll convince Stephen to drop the assault charges. Andrew leaned over. Save that. It's blackmail. He began downloading the message as another text arrived. Refuse, and I'll destroy your career. Your board will hear about your violent tendencies. The rest of the afternoon was spent in Andrew's office, compiling evidence. The corner suite overlooked Chicago's skyline, a stark reminder of how far Anthony had come and how much he stood to lose. His mind wandered to the early days with Merlin, when her affection had seemed sincere. She sent 3 more threats, Anthony muttered, scrolling through his phone. Now she's accusing me of drug abuse. Baseless, Andrew replied. Your board-required drug tests clear you, but keep those messages. They're evidence of malice. A call came in from Sophia, one of Merlin's former confidants. Anthony, we need to talk. There's something you should know about Merlin and Stephen. Andrew glanced up. Sophia Clayton? The socialite Merlin always bragged about? Bring her here. If she's flipping, her testimony is invaluable. An hour later, Sophia sat across from them, nervously twisting the strap of her purse. Her normally polished appearance was overshadowed by the exhaustion etched into her face. Merlin's going to destroy me for this, she began hesitantly. Like she destroyed my marriage? Anthony asked softly. Her head snapped up. She told you? I found the messages. She helped your husband hide his affairs in exchange for investments in Stephen's fund. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. I trusted her. We all did. She pretended to help struggling couples but was really gathering blackmail material. Would you make a formal statement? Andrew asked. Sophia nodded. That's why I'm here. Merlin's been running this scam with Stephen for years, targeting wealthy couples, gaining their trust, then tearing them apart. Stephen lured in new investors and Merlin took a cut. Anthony felt a wave of nausea. How many? At least a dozen, Sophia admitted, including my sister and her husband. They lost everything. Anthony slid a box of tissues toward her. We'll need names, dates, any proof you can provide. I've saved everything. Sophia pulled a USB drive from her purse. Emails, photos, bank records. Merlin thought I wouldn't make copies. Anthony plugged in the drive, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of evidence. She'll come after you, he warned. Sophia straightened her posture. Let her. She already ruined my marriage, my sister's finances, and my reputation. I have nothing left to lose. Andrew leaned in. Why now? Why speak up? Sophia's expression hardened. Because of what happened at the party. Merlin bragged about ruining Anthony, said she'd done the same to her first husband. Anthony recalled Merlin's vague tales of her first marriage, portraying her ex as a crazy man who'd lost everything in their divorce. "I couldn't let her do it again," Sophia said, her voice trembling with resolve. "Not after what she did to my sister." As more details spilled out, Anthony's phone buzzed repeatedly with new threats from Merlin. The latest read, "Your career is finished. By the time I'm finished with you, no business in Chicago will even consider hiring you." Was that outburst of anger really worth it? Andrew read the text message, a cold, bitter smile forming on his face. She has no idea about the SEC investigation, does she? Or how Stephen has been using her as bait to lure investors into his Ponzi scheme. Sophia's jaw dropped. "A Ponzi scheme? Are you serious right now?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Anthony gave a solemn nod. "And likely all our money is gone," he added. "It also explains why Merlin has been so frantic for cash lately. The whole scheme is unraveling." Andrew's phone vibrated again. "Another one from Merlin," he said, scanning the screen. He read the message aloud. "I told your mother everything about how you mistreated me. She believes me now. She knows who you really are." Anthony's jaw tightened. His mother, still fragile after losing his father, would be devastated by such manipulative lies. "I have to call her," he said, rising from his chair. "Use my private office," Andrew suggested, pointing toward the door. "Sophia and I will work on drafting her statement." Inside the office, Anthony dialed his mother's number, his chest constricting with anxiety. Each ring felt like an eternity as he imagined Merlin spinning her fabrications to poison his mother's perception. Finally, his mother answered, her voice strained and hesitant. "Anthony." "Mom, whatever Merlin told you—" "She called me in tears," his mother interrupted. "She said you attacked her lover at some party. That doesn't sound like the son I know." Anthony exhaled slowly, steadying himself. "Did she tell you why I was even at that party? Or how I caught her cheating?" There was a pause. "No," she admitted. "She just kept saying how terrified she was of you, how controlling you've become. But that doesn't align with the son I raised." "Mom, I caught her with Stephen Sullivan," Anthony explained. "She's been helping him with his scam, breaking up families and stealing money." His mother's tone sharpened. "I always knew something about her was off. She'd constantly find excuses to keep you from visiting after your father passed. Your father never trusted her either. He said she reminded him of those corporate sharks who tried to take over his company." Anthony's heart ached at the memory of his father's intuition. "She's going to keep spreading lies, Mom," he warned. "Let her," his mother replied with determination. "I'm headed to Bridge Club this afternoon, and half the ladies there lost money to Stephen Sullivan. They'll be eager to hear about Merlin's involvement." Reassured, Anthony returned to Andrew's office. Sophia was gone, but two familiar faces greeted him instead. Madison and Claire, both former friends of Merlin, had arrived. Their expressions were grim, but determined. "Your wife has been busy," Madison began without preamble. "She's calling everyone, accusing you of being abusive." Claire chimed in. "She even told my husband you made inappropriate advances at last year's Christmas party. She tried the same trick with me." Andrew looked at Anthony as his phone buzzed again. "Stephen," Andrew said, reading the message, "drop the evidence against Merlin, or assault charges won't be your only problem." Andrew's expression darkened. He's losing his grip. The SEC must be closing in. Claire raised her phone, revealing a series of screenshots. "I have more proof," she said. The messages depicted Merlin setting up introductions at Stephen's infamous parties. "She called it her matchmaking service," Claire explained. "But it was really about recruiting victims for their scam." Madison elaborated. "She targeted unhappy spouses, introduced them to Stephen's associates, and then used the resulting affairs to pressure the husbands into investing." Anthony's email pinged with a new message. It was from the board secretary at his company. Merlin had contacted them, accusing him of violence and drug abuse. Andrew glanced at the email. "Perfect timing," he said. "The board chairman's wife lost a fortune to Stephen's fund. He'll be eager to see evidence of Merlin's role." Anthony quickly compiled the documentation and attached it to his reply. As he worked, Messages from people Merlin had contacted began flooding his inbox. But instead of believing her, they reached out to him for clarification. "She's getting sloppy," Andrew observed. "Desperation is setting in." Anthony hit send on his email. "Good. I'm done playing defense." His phone buzzed again, this time a message from Merlin herself. "Fine," the text read. "You want to play hardball? Meet me at the house in an hour, alone, or I'll send proof of your insider trading to the SEC. Anthony showed the text to Andrew. "She's bluffing," Andrew said. "You've never traded on insider information." "No," Anthony agreed. "But she has." Straightening his jacket, he added, "It's time to let her trap herself." "Want me to come with you?" Andrew offered. Anthony shook his head. "She'll only talk if she thinks she's in control. Besides, the house is equipped with audio and video surveillance. Everything she says will be recorded." Andrew's expression turned serious. "Be careful. Cornered people are the most dangerous." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," Anthony replied, grabbing his files. "Merlin's always been her own worst enemy." When Anthony arrived at his home, Merlin's Mercedes was parked in the driveway. He checked his phone one last time to ensure the security system was operational. Andrew's message reassured him. A legal team was standing by. Inside, Merlin waited in his office, sitting as though she still owned the space. She wore a conservative blue dress, an attempt to appear poised and innocent. "You're late," she remarked coolly, turning her chair to face him. "It's my house, I can't be late," he replied evenly. Her lips curved into a self-satisfied smirk. "Not for long. Once I hand this over to the SEC," she said, holding up a USB drive, "you'll be swapping your suit for a prison uniform." Anthony leaned casually against the doorframe. "And what do you think you have on there?" "Everything," she replied with a flourish. "Every insider trade you've ever made, conveniently timed stock purchases, it's all there." Anthony's calm demeanor seemed to unsettle her. "You mean your trades?" he asked. Her confidence wavered. "What are you talking about?" "The trades executed from our home's IP address during board meetings," he explained. "When I was physically in those meetings, as verified by video and meeting minutes. All those transactions were tied to your accounts, using your devices." Anthony pulled out his phone, displaying logs of every login and trade. "Each one is time-stamped and linked to your devices." Merlin's face turned pale. "You can't prove—" "You used my passwords," he interrupted, "which you photographed from sticky notes I left out deliberately after discovering your first affair months ago." "You're lying," she stammered. Anthony stepped closer. "The SEC is already interested in Stephen's clients and their suspicious trades. How much insider information did you feed him, Merlin? How many of my files did you steal?" She tried to push past him, but he blocked her path. "Move," she hissed, "or I'll scream assault again." Anthony gestured toward the hidden cameras. "Feel free. Every word, every threat, every admission is being recorded." Merlin's composure disintegrated in a heartbeat. "You deceitful snake," she snarled. "This was your plan all along." Anthony's expression remained steady. "No, Merlin, you orchestrated your own downfall." Seething, she flung the USB drive at him. "Fine," she said bitterly. "Take it, but I've got backups that expose your securities fraud." Effortlessly catching the drive, Anthony's smirk turned icier. "Excellent. Share them if you like. The SEC will have a field day." Her voice dropped to a venomous murmur. "I'll tell them you forced me into it." Anthony let out a dry, mirthless chuckle. "You might find that tricky, considering the photos from Stephen's parties. You know, the ones placing you there on the very nights you claimed I was abusing you. Timestamps are a fascinating thing." Her knees buckled, and she sank into the nearest chair. For the first time, true panic flickered across her face. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Anthony's reply was razor-sharp. "I want you out of my life. You'll receive divorce papers from my lawyer. Sign them, admit to your infidelities and fraud, and leave with nothing but the clothes on your back." Her voice wavered as she protested. "You can't do this." "Oh, I can," he retorted, his tone like steel. "Your choices are simple. Sign and disappear, or I hand over evidence of your insider trading, blackmail, and escort dealings to the SEC FBI and IRS. Her resolve crumbled as she unsteadily got to her feet. At the door, she paused, tears streaking her once flawless makeup. "I loved you once," she said quietly. His gaze remained unyielding. "No, Merlin. You loved what I could provide. There's a world of difference." As the door closed behind her, Anthony forwarded a recording of their conversation to Andrew. His phone buzzed moments later. "Got everything," Andrew confirmed. "With this and Sophia's evidence, she's done. And Stephen? The SEC's making their move tomorrow. Merlin's admission was the final nail." Anthony watched Merlin's car vanish down the street. "She was never my wife," he muttered under his breath. Later, in Andrew's office, the two men finalized their strategy. The desk was strewn with damning photos and screenshots from Stephen's infamous parties. "Timing is critical," Andrew remarked as he sorted through the evidence. "We need to strike hard and fast." Anthony showed Andrew Merlin's latest Instagram post. It was a carefully staged photo portraying her as fragile and vulnerable, accompanied by vague accusations of surviving abuse. Andrew chuckled darkly. "She's handing us the perfect opening. Posts like these backfire spectacularly when hard evidence disproves them." A message from Sophia appeared on Anthony's phone. "Merlin's at the Four Seasons playing the victim and accusing you of threats. Should I record her?" Andrew glanced at the message. "She can't resist performing for an audience." "Let her talk," Anthony replied. "Every word just adds to the arsenal." Andrew opened his laptop. "Ready?" Anthony exhaled slowly. "Do it." Andrew began uploading their trove of evidence to social media. The posts exposed Merlin's affairs, detailed her connections to Stephen's schemes, and included videos of her threatening Anthony. "Once it's live, there's no turning back," Andrew warned. "Let her throw everything she's got at me," Anthony said, watching the first post go public. "Her entire world is built on lies. It's time for the truth to surface." Within hours, the revelations tore through Chicago's elite circles like a hurricane. Merlin's carefully crafted image imploded as video after video revealed her duplicity. Anthony's phone buzzed. Claire's voice was animated. "You won't believe what just happened at the Four Seasons. Someone played the video of her at Stephen's party right in the lobby." "How did she react?" Anthony asked. "She lost it," Claire replied, barely suppressing her laughter. "Started ranting about conspiracies until Stephen called her. He dumped her over speakerphone in front of everyone. Apparently, she promised him none of this would get out." By nightfall, Merlin retaliated with a lawsuit. News alerts lit up Anthony's screen, filled with accusations of defamation and emotional distress. Andrew called, clearly amused. "Have you read her claims?" "Skimming now," Anthony replied. "She's accusing me of fabricating everything, which means she's tacitly acknowledging she knows what the real evidence says." An email from Stephen's lawyer arrived next. "Stephen wants a deal," Anthony noted. "He'll testify against Merlin if we help him with the SEC." Andrew's tone was firm. "It's too late. The SEC's already moving. Most of his clients have turned on him anyway." Madison called soon after. "Merlin just tried to get into the Chicago Arts Club," she reported. "They locked the doors when they saw her coming. Someone even projected your videos onto the building next door while she stood outside screaming." "Who arranged that?" Anthony asked. "Remember Thomas? The guy whose wife Merlin blackmailed? He owns the building. He called it the best use of $1 million screen." Anthony allowed himself a faint smile. "How's she handling the attention?" "Not well. She's claiming the videos are fake, but then someone played her own Instagram live recordings. The timestamps matched perfectly." Andrew cleared his throat. "Speaking of Instagram, check her latest post." Anthony opened Merlin's profile. The fallout wasn't over, not by a long shot. Merlin appeared in an emotional video online, her face streaked with mascara as tears poured down her cheeks. "My husband is running a cruel vendetta to destroy me," she wept into the camera. The video gained viral traction almost instantly, but the comment section turned brutal. Viewers began juxtaposing her claims with clips of her actual behavior, unraveling her web of lies. Old acquaintances stepped forward to share their stories, recounting episodes of her deceit and betrayal. "She's just digging herself deeper," Andrew commented. Each denial brings out more witnesses to expose her. The mood shifted abruptly when Anthony's security system alerted him. "She's here," he said grimly. Through the surveillance feed, they saw Merlin at the front door, visibly intoxicated. Her previously flawless image was in shambles. Her hair was disheveled, her designer dress wrinkled, and she clutched her shoes in one hand. "Let me in!" she screamed at the camera. "You can't do this to me! I made you!" "Is this recording?" Andrew asked. Anthony gave a nod. "Every bit of it." They watched as Merlin hurled a shoe at the window and tried to force her way inside. The wail of police sirens echoed in the distance. Hearing them, Merlin stumbled back to her car in a panic, barely managing to leave the premises before 2 police cars arrived. "The neighbors must have called the cops," Andrew remarked. "Looks like they've had enough of her antics, too." Just then, Anthony's phone buzzed with a message from Sophia. "Stephen's been arrested." Sophia elaborated that the SEC had accelerated their actions, fueled by Merlin's recent public meltdown. "You should turn on the news," she added. On screen, every major channel was covering the scandal. Stephen Sullivan, a prominent hedge fund manager, had been taken into custody for running a massive Ponzi scheme. Merlin's name surfaced repeatedly, linked to allegations of her using blackmail and manipulation to coerce investors. "Think she's watching?" Anthony asked. Andrew chuckled. "Without a doubt, right on cue." Anthony's phone lit up with a call from Merlin. "Want me to stay on the line?" Andrew offered. Anthony shook his head. "Just keep recording." When Anthony answered, Merlin's voice was frantic and slurred. "You have to help me," she pleaded. "Stephen's lawyers said I'll be charged as an accomplice. They're freezing my accounts." Anthony's reply was ice cold. "Help you? Like you helped the people you ruined, like Sarah, who nearly took her own life after you and Stephen stole her savings." "That wasn't my fault," Merlin screeched. "Stephen said the investments were safe." "Save it for the prosecutors," Anthony retorted, glancing at his computer as news headlines continued to flood in about the scandal. "I'm sure they'll want to hear how you pressured people into a Ponzi scheme." "Please," she whimpered. "I'll sign the divorce papers. I'll confess to everything. Just help me." "Like you were planning to help me? What was it you said at the party? That you'd take everything and leave me with nothing?" A silence lingered before Merlin's tone turned venomous. "Fine. If you want to play hardball, I still have copies of your private files, documents and board meeting notes. They'll prove your insider trading." Anthony's smirk was chilling. "Feel free to share them with the authorities. They'll love seeing the metadata that shows exactly when and how you accessed them." Her voice faltered. "You can't prove—" "Check your email," Anthony said calmly. Moments later, Merlin's phone pinged. A gasp followed as she opened the attachment. Security footage showing her photographing confidential documents and sending them to Stephen. "Those cameras," she stammered. "How long have they been there?" "Long enough," Anthony replied. "After Sarah's suicide attempt, I started recording everything. I knew it was only a matter of time before you targeted someone else." This time, Merlin's tears were genuine, unlike the calculated sobs in her viral video. "I'll lose everything." "Now you understand how your victims felt," Anthony said. "Goodbye, Merlin." He hung up, leaving her screaming threats into the void. Within minutes, social media exploded with updates about Stephen's arrest and Merlin's involvement. Former acquaintances came forward, sharing accounts of her schemes and betrayals. The following morning, Anthony arrived at the courthouse for the divorce hearing. Andrew met him on the steps, looking pleased. "Merlin's lawyer quit," he announced. After she insisted the videos were fake, he checked the metadata and told the judge he couldn't ethically represent her. "Where is she?" Anthony asked. "Inside, trying to delay the proceedings," Andrew replied. "But with the SEC investigation and our evidence—" Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion. Merlin arrived, disheveled and red-eyed, a far cry from her usual polished self. "You did this!" she screamed at Anthony. "You planned this all along!" "No, Merlin," Anthony said calmly, fully aware of the cameras documenting their exchange. "You did this. Every scheme, every lie, every person you hurt, that was all you." "Liar!" she shrieked. "I'll tell everyone you abused me!" "Mrs. Henderson," a stern voice cut in. Judge Thompson appeared in the doorway. Save your accusations for the courtroom, where evidence can be reviewed. Merlin's bravado crumbled. Your Honor, I need more time. My lawyer withdrew. The judge's gaze was unyielding. Please continue explaining how authenticated videos are supposedly fabricated. In court, Anthony remained composed while Merlin squirmed. Her court-appointed lawyer's attempts to argue were swiftly dismantled by the judge. As for the assault allegations, the judge said, are you referring to this incident? He played a video showing Merlin and Stephen at a party, their illegal activities captured in plain view. Merlin jumped to her feet. He broke Stephen's nose, she shouted, after discovering your infidelity at a... Judge Thompson adjusted his glasses. A party involving escort girls and investment scams? He turned to Merlin. Fascinating defense, Mrs. Henderson. It wasn't me, Merlin stammered. It was all Stephen's idea. Andrew stood and presented a stack of papers. These sworn statements from victims tell another story. They describe how you orchestrated blackmail and affairs to funnel investments into Stephen's fund. The judge leafed through the accounts, pausing at one. Sarah Clayton's testimony is particularly harrowing, he remarked. Her suicide attempt after losing her life savings is devastating. Merlin sneered. They were weak, all of them. I revealed their hidden truths. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom, leaving everyone stunned into silence. Merlin's lawyer slumped in his chair, his head cradled in his hands as though the weight of the moment had finally broken him. Well, Judge Thompson began, his voice laced with biting irony. Mrs. Henderson, that certainly sheds light on things. His gaze shifted sharply to Anthony. Mr. Henderson, the judge continued, you're petitioning for divorce on the grounds of infidelity and fraud? That's correct, Your Honor, Anthony replied firmly. And you're seeking to retain all assets, citing Mrs. Henderson's documented criminal activities and misappropriation of shared funds? Yes, sir, Anthony confirmed. But before Judge Thompson could proceed, Merlin shot to her feet. This is outrageous, she exclaimed, her voice shaking with defiance. That money belongs to me. I don't care what charges you're planning to throw at me. I've earned it. The judge raised an eyebrow, his expression skeptical. From the evidence before me, those charges include solicitation, extortion, insider trading, and securities fraud. Care to explain exactly what you believe you're entitled to? Right on cue, 2 agents from the SEC entered the courtroom, their badges glinting under the lights. With a nod, Judge Thompson acknowledged their arrival. Excellent timing. The divorce is finalized. Mr. Henderson, you retain all shared assets. He turned back to Merlin. And I'm sure these agents have some questions about your involvement with Mr. Sullivan's schemes. Merlin staggered backward as the agents approached. You can't arrest me, she cried. I have rights. You're absolutely correct, one of the agents said coolly, producing handcuffs. Including the right to remain silent, a right I suggest you start exercising, considering how much you've already said. As they led her away, Merlin turned to Anthony with a venomous glare. I'll get out one day, she snarled. Anthony's response was calm and steady. And then what? Spin more lies? Fool more people? Good luck convincing anyone to trust you again. The courtroom doors closed behind her, cutting off her angry shouts. Relief washed over Anthony as Judge Thompson finalized the last of the documents. Back in his office, Anthony surveyed the transformed space. What had once been a command center for Merlin's manipulations was now a hub of genuine progress and achievement. The wall that had displayed their wedding photo now showcased a plaque commemorating his company's latest triumph, a merger that had doubled its market share. His phone buzzed with a notification. Stephen Sullivan pleads guilty in major investment fraud scandal, the headline announced. Skimming the article, Anthony noted that Sullivan had implicated everyone involved, including Merlin, in exchange for a reduced sentence. Moments later, his phone rang. It was Andrew. Did you see the news? Just finished reading it, Anthony replied. How many years did Sullivan get? 25, Andrew said. Could have been life, but he handed over everything. Every scam, every accomplice, every victim. Andrew hesitated before adding, Merlin's trial starts next week. Anthony set his coffee cup down. Sophia's testifying, isn't she? Her and half the city's elite, Andrew confirmed. It's incredible how quickly people turn when they realize they've been duped. Anthony glanced out the window, watching life outside return to its ordinary rhythm. Neighbors walked their dogs, children rode bikes, and the world moved on, free of the chaos Merlin had brought into his life. By the way, Andrew continued, Sarah Clayton's doing better. Therapy's helping, and with Sullivan's guilty plea, she'll recover some losses through the victim's fund. She deserves that, Anthony said quietly, after everything they put her through. Andrew's voice softened. And how about you? How are you holding up? Anthony paused, reflecting. The past month had been transformative. His board had rallied behind him once Merlin's schemes were exposed, and old friendships damaged by her lies were being repaired. Better than I've been in years, he said at last. Andrew chuckled. Oh, and you'll love this. Merlin's lawyer reached out. She'll plead guilty if you write a leniency letter. Anthony laughed darkly. Not happening. She made her bed. That's what I told them, Andrew said. And her little social media campaign backfired spectacularly. Every time she posts about being a victim, the comments flood with evidence of her crimes. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Madison stepped in, carrying a thick folder. I'll call you back, Anthony told Andrew, hanging up. What's going on? You won't believe this, Madison said, setting the folder on his desk. The country club's renaming their annual gala. Instead of the usual black tie event, it's now a fundraiser for fraud victims. They want you to be the keynote speaker. Anthony raised an eyebrow. The same club that nearly ostracized me when Merlin spread her lies? They're scrambling to distance themselves from her and Sullivan, Madison said with a wry smile. Half their members lost money in the scam. Anthony's phone buzzed again, this time displaying Merlin's mugshot. Her carefully constructed facade was shattered, replaced by the harsh reality of prison life. She really believed her charm would save her, Madison said, shaking her head. That her looks and charisma would let her escape the consequences, like always. Anthony closed the article, his expression thoughtful. She never understood the difference between appearances and reality. Together, they walked toward the conference room. The space, once tainted by Merlin's deceit, now stood as a testament to genuine accomplishment and trust. People keep asking if you'll ever trust again, Madison said, if you can move past what she did. Anthony considered her words. The betrayal had taught him hard lessons, honed his instincts, and revealed his inner strength. I already have, he replied, by remembering who I was before her and becoming stronger than she ever imagined. His phone buzzed one last time, another message from Merlin through the prison's email system. I'm sorry. Please help me. I've changed. Without hesitation, Anthony deleted it. Some chapters were better left closed. Outside his window, the Chicago skyline stretched under a bright autumn sky. It had borne witness to his tumultuous marriage, and now watched as he reclaimed his life. Merlin had tried to orchestrate his downfall, but ended up writing her own undoing. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.